Carl Jung discovered that you can see someone's true character by paying attention to just two things. Not their words, not their achievements, not even their actions when people are watching. Jung found that two specific psychological reveals expose who someone really is beneath their mask, and most people give away these secrets without realizing it. Picture this moment. You're sitting across from someone you thought you knew, a colleague, a friend, maybe even your partner. They seem genuine, trustworthy, put together, but something feels off. You can't put your finger on it, but your instincts are telling you there's more beneath the surface. Jung spent decades studying what he called the persona, the mask we all wear to hide our true selves. But he discovered that no matter how carefully someone constructs their image, these two psychological tells always slip through. And once you know what to look for, you'll never be fooled by a false persona again. These aren't complex psychological tests. They're simple observations that reveal the deepest truths about human nature. And by the end of this journey, you'll not only be able to read others like an open book, but you'll understand yourself in ways you never thought possible. But here's what makes Jung's discovery so unsettling. These two reveals don't just expose other people's character. They force you to confront your own hidden nature. Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And these two psychological windows will show you parts of yourself you've been avoiding. Most people go through life believing they can judge character through surface behaviors. They look for confidence, kindness, success, or charisma. But Jung understood that these are all part of what I call the performance layer. The carefully constructed image we present to the world. The real person lives beneath this performance. And Jung discovered that no matter how skilled someone becomes at managing their image, two specific psychological patterns will always reveal their authentic nature. These patterns operate outside conscious control, which is why they're so reliable. Jung wrote, "Thinking is difficult. That's why most people judge. But judgment based on surface appearances is almost always wrong. True character assessment requires looking deeper into the unconscious patterns that people can't fake or manipulate." What Jung found was that character reveals itself not in what people choose to show you, but in what they can't help but reveal. These two psychological signatures emerge whenever someone's guard is down, their mask slips, or they're under any kind of pressure. Jung's first character reveal is what I call shadow mapping, discovering someone's true nature by observing who they judge most harshly. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This unconscious direction shows up most clearly in our judgments of others. When someone criticizes another person with unusual intensity, they're not just making an observation, they're projecting their own dissound traits onto that person. Jung discovered that what we hate most in others is often what we've buried deepest in ourselves. He called this projection the unconscious process of seeing our own rejected qualities in other people. The stronger the emotional reaction, the closer you're getting to their shadow. Let me show you how this works. Meet David, a successful architect who prides himself on his integrity. At every office meeting, David complains about his colleague Marcus, calling him fake and manipulative. David's voice gets sharp when he talks about Marcus's charm with clients. His jaw tightens when Marcus gets praise. But here's what Jung would see. David's intense reaction to Marcus isn't about Marcus at all. It's about a part of David that he's rejected. Deep down, David wishes he could be more charming, more socially skilled. But he's buried this desire because he believes it would make him fake. Jung wrote, "We cannot change anything until we accept it." Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. David's condemnation of Marcus is actually self-oppression. He's rejecting a part of himself that could serve him well. This is why shadow mapping works so reliably. When someone judges others harshly, they're always telling you something about their own internal conflicts. The traits they criticize most are often the ones they've pushed into their unconscious. If you've ever caught yourself judging someone and realized it revealed something about you, comment, "I see my shadow in my judgments." But shadow projection isn't always negative. Jung discovered that we also project positive qualities we're afraid to claim. When someone consistently puts others on pedestals, calling them so talented or so confident, They're often projecting abilities they possess but don't acknowledge in themselves. The key is to watch for emotional intensity. When someone's reaction to another person is disproportionate, whether negative or positive, you're seeing their shadow in action. This reveals not just what they've rejected in themselves, but also what they secretly long to express. Jung's second character reveal is what I call mask maintenance, observing how someone behaves when their carefully constructed image is threatened. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But most people spend enormous energy maintaining who they think they should be. This maintenance requires constant effort." And Jung discovered that when someone's persona is challenged, when their mask slips, or their image is questioned, their authentic character emerges in that moment of vulnerability. Here's how to spot it. Watch what happens when someone faces unexpected criticism, when their competence is questioned, or when they're caught in a mistake. Do they become defensive? Do they attack back? Do they deflect blame? Or do they pause, reflect, and respond authentically? Let me illustrate with Sarah's story. Sarah is a marketing director known for her calm professionalism. She's built her career on being the unflappable one, the person who never loses her cool under pressure. But during a high-stakes client meeting, the client criticized her team's strategy, questioning Sarah's judgment. In that moment, Sarah's persona cracked. Her voice became sharp, her posture rigid. She interrupted the client, deflected blame to her team, and made subtle digs at the client's previous decisions. The calm professional disappeared, revealing someone defensive, insecure, and willing to sacrifice her team to protect her image. Jung would say this moment revealed Sarah's authentic character more than years of professional interaction. Under pressure, when her carefully maintained image was threatened, her true patterns emerged. Jung wrote, "The foundation of all mental illness is the unwillingness to experience legitimate suffering." Sarah's unwillingness to experience the discomfort of being criticized forced her into defensive patterns that revealed her character. Here's where this gets powerful for character assessment. These persona breakdowns don't just happen during major crises. They occur in small moments throughout everyday interactions. When someone's phone dies and they can't check social media, when they're kept waiting longer than expected, when someone doesn't laugh at their joke, watch for micro-expressions. Tone changes, body language shifts. These tiny moments when the mask slips reveal more about someone's character than hours of casual conversation. Jung understood that authentic character isn't what someone chooses to show you when they're prepared. It's what emerges when they're unprepared, unguarded, or under pressure. The most integrated people, those Jung would call individuated, show consistency between their persona and their authentic responses. Their public image and private reactions align because they've done the work of accepting themselves completely. Now that you understand Jung's two character reveals, let's explore why they work so reliably from a psychological perspective. Jung spent his career studying what he called the architecture of the psyche, how the mind organizes itself to navigate reality while protecting the ego. Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But before transformation can occur, we must understand the chemical composition of each personality, their authentic character beneath the social performance." The reason shadow projection reveals character so accurately is because our unconscious mind can't distinguish between self and other when it comes to rejected material. When David criticizes Marcus for being fake, his unconscious is actually trying to process his own relationship with authenticity versus social performance. Jung discovered that the unconscious operates through what I call projection mapping. It casts internal conflicts onto external people to make them visible and workable. The intensity of someone's judgment always corresponds to the intensity of their internal struggle with that particular trait. This is why people who are genuinely secure in an area rarely judge others harshly for weaknesses in that same area. Someone who's truly confident doesn't waste energy criticizing others' insecurities. Someone who's authentically successful doesn't feel threatened by others' ambitions. Jung wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people about one, from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself." When someone consistently judges others, they're revealing their own inner loneliness, their disconnection from rejected parts of themselves. The second reveal, persona breakdown, works because maintaining a false image requires enormous psychological energy. Jung called this ego maintenance, and he understood that this system becomes fragile under stress. When someone's persona is threatened, their primitive defense mechanisms activate. These defenses reveal their core psychological patterns. Do they attack, indicating underlying aggression? Do they withdraw, showing avoidance patterns? Do they deflect, revealing dishonesty tendencies? Or do they integrate, demonstrating psychological maturity? Jung wrote, "A man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them." The way someone handles criticism or challenge shows whether they've integrated their difficult emotions or are still controlled by them. Comment if you've noticed someone's true character emerge under pressure. Stress reveals truth. These patterns are so reliable because they operate below conscious awareness. Someone can control their words, manage their facial expressions, and carefully craft their responses when they're prepared. But when their psychological defenses are activated, authentic patterns emerge. Jung understood that character assessment isn't about catching people in lies or exposing their flaws. It's about seeing the whole person, their struggles, their defenses, their growth areas, and their authentic strengths. This understanding allows for genuine connection rather than surface-level interaction. Beyond Jung's two primary reveals, there's a third pattern that emerges when you combine them. What I call the integration test. Observing how someone handles their own shadow material when it's reflected back to them. This is the ultimate character assessment because it shows whether someone is capable of growth or trapped in unconscious patterns. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Here's how the integration test works. When you notice someone projecting their shadow onto others, gently reflect it back to them, not accusingly, but curiosity. "I noticed you seem really bothered by people who show off." Have you ever felt like you wanted to show off but held yourself back? Watch what happens. This moment reveals more about their character than months of observation because it tests their relationship with their own unconscious material. Let me show you this in action through two different responses. Remember David, who judges Marcus for being fake? When asked if he ever wishes he could be more socially skilled, David might respond in one of two ways. Response 1, the defensive pattern. "Are you saying I'm fake like Marcus? That's ridiculous. I'm authentic unlike him. I don't need to manipulate people to get ahead." This response shows David is deeply defended against his shadow. His character is rigid, his growth potential limited by his inability to acknowledge his own complexity. Response 2, the integrative pattern. "Actually, yeah. Sometimes I do wish I was better with people. I admire Marcus's social skills, even though his approach bothers me. Maybe I'm jealous of something I wish I had." This response shows David can hold paradox, being bothered by something while also recognizing his own relationship to it. Jung wrote, "The most intense conflicts, if overcome, leave behind a sense of security and calm that is not easily disturbed." People who can integrate feedback about their shadow show this quality. They become stronger through self-awareness rather than weaker. The integration test reveals three distinct character types that Jung identified. The unconscious type remains completely unaware of their projections and becomes defensive when confronted with them. They lack self-reflection and are often surprised by others' reactions to them. The aware but defended type recognizes their projections intellectually, but can't integrate them emotionally. They might say, "I know I judge people," but they can't explore why or what it reveals about them. The integrated type can observe their projections with curiosity, learn from them, and use them as information about their own growth areas. Jung called these individuals conscious, not perfect, but awake to their own psychological patterns. If you've learned to see your judgments as information about yourself, comment, "My projections became my teachers." This integration capacity predicts how someone will handle conflict, growth, criticism, and intimacy in relationships. People who can't integrate their shadow material will repeat the same patterns indefinitely, blaming external circumstances for internal struggles. Those who can work with their projections consciously become what Jung called individuated. authentic, self-aware, and capable of genuine connection with others. Now that you understand Jung's character assessment framework, let's explore how to apply it in real-world situations. But first, a crucial warning. Jung wrote, "Where love reigns, there is no will to power, and where the will to power is paramount, love is lacking." Use these insights to understand and connect, not to manipulate or control. Character assessment should serve compassion, not domination. Here's how to apply shadow mapping in different contexts. In romantic relationships, listen to how your partner talks about their exes, their co-workers, or people they dislike. Are they consistently bothered by selfish people? This might reveal their own struggle with healthy self-advocacy. Do they criticize needy people? They might be denying their own need for connection, but use this information to understand and support them, not to attack them. If you notice your partner projecting, you might say, "It sounds like that person's neediness really bothers you. Do you ever feel like you can't express your own needs?" This creates space for deeper intimacy. In professional settings, observe how colleagues handle feedback, criticism, or challenges to their ideas. Do they become defensive, deflect blame, or attack the messenger? Or do they pause, consider, and respond thoughtfully? This reveals their capacity for growth, collaboration, and leadership under pressure. Jung wrote, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another." There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. Understanding someone's character patterns helps you communicate in ways that fit their psychological structure. For parenting, these insights are invaluable. When your teenager complains that their friends are fake or attention-seeking, help them explore what this reveals about their own struggles with authenticity and social belonging. This builds self-awareness instead of judgment. Remember, character assessment is a two-way mirror. Jung wrote, "Everyone you meet knows something you don't know but need to know." Learn from them. Every judgment you make, every reaction you have to someone else's behavior reveals something about your own psychological patterns. Here's a practical exercise for the next week. Keep a shadow journal. When someone irritates you, write down exactly what bothers you about them. Ask yourself, where might this trait exist in me? What am I afraid of about this quality? Don't judge yourself for what you find. Jung wrote, "The acceptance of oneself is the essence of the whole moral problem and the epitome of a whole outlook on life." Self-acceptance isn't self-indulgence. It's the foundation of psychological health. Also, practice the integration test on yourself. When someone gives you feedback that triggers defensiveness, pause before responding. Ask yourself, what if there's truth in this? What might I learn about myself? Jung understood that character development isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming conscious. The goal isn't to eliminate your shadow, but to work with it consciously rather than being controlled by it unconsciously. Comment if you're ready to start seeing your reactions as information about yourself. I choose conscious self-discovery. Before we go deeper, we must address the shadow side of character assessment itself. Jung wrote, "The healthy man does not torture others. Generally, it is the tortured who turn into torturers." The ability to read character can become its own form of psychological torture if misused. I've seen people use Jung's insights to become what I call shadow hunters, individuals who use psychological knowledge to attack others' vulnerabilities rather than understand them. This represents a complete perversion of Jung's work. Jung warned about this danger. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul. Sometimes people become obsessed with analyzing others precisely to avoid looking at themselves. Here are the warning signs that you're misusing character assessment. You feel superior when you figure someone out. This superiority complex indicates you're using psychological insight to inflate your ego rather than build understanding. You use your observations to manipulate others. If you're leveraging someone's shadow patterns or persona weaknesses to control them, you've become what Jung would call psychologically poisonous. You become judgmental rather than curious. True character assessment should increase your compassion, not your criticism. If you find yourself becoming more judgmental, you're projecting your own shadow. You avoid examining your own patterns. If you're constantly analyzing others, but never turning the same scrutiny inward, you're using psychology as a defense against self-awareness. Jung wrote, "The greatest danger is that one may get stuck in the unconscious and never come back to reality. Sometimes people get so fascinated by psychological analysis that they lose touch with simple human connection. The antidote to these dangers is what Jung called ethical relationship to the unconscious. This means using psychological insight to serve love, understanding, and growth, not power, control, or superiority. Remember that everyone you meet is fighting battles you know nothing about. Jung wrote, "In order to know the light, we must first experience the darkness." Their shadow projections and persona defenses often represent their attempts to cope with pain, trauma, or fear. True character assessment should make you more humble, not more arrogant. When you see someone's psychological patterns clearly, you're seeing their humanity, their struggles, their defenses, their attempts to navigate a complex world with limited tools. Jung understood that we're all wounded healers, all carrying shadow material, all wearing personas to protect our vulnerable cause. The goal isn't to expose others' masks, but to create safety for authentic connection. Use these insights to build bridges, not walls. Let character understanding lead to compassion, not condemnation. The most profound aspect of Jung's character assessment framework is what I call the mirror effect, the inevitable moment when you realize that everyone you're analyzing is reflecting aspects of your own psyche back to you. Jung wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams? Who looks inside awakes?" The ultimate purpose of reading others' character is to awaken to your own. This mirror effect operates on multiple levels. First, the people who trigger your strongest reactions are always showing you your own shadow material. If you're consistently bothered by arrogant people, examine your relationship with confidence and humility. If needy people drain you, explore your own needs and how you express them. Second, the character traits you most admire in others often represent your own undeveloped potential. Jung called this positive projection, casting your own unlived possibilities onto others. When you put someone on a pedestal for being so creative or so confident, you might be projecting qualities you possess but haven't claimed. Third, the patterns you recognize in others become visible in yourself once you know what to look for. If you become skilled at spotting others' persona breakdowns, you'll start noticing your own. If you can see others' shadow projections, you'll begin catching your own in real time. This mirror effect creates a feedback loop of self-awareness. Every person becomes a teacher. Every interaction becomes a classroom. Every judgment becomes a door to self-discovery. Let me share how this played out in my own understanding. I once worked with someone whose constant need for validation irritated me intensely. I judged them as insecure and attention-seeking, but Jung's framework forced me to examine why their behavior triggered me so strongly. The uncomfortable truth was that I had my own relationship with validation that I wasn't acknowledging. I had developed subtle ways of seeking approval that I convinced myself were different from their obvious methods. My judgment was actually self-rejection. I was criticizing in them what I couldn't accept in myself. Jung wrote, "We are not what happened to us. We are what we wish to become." The mirror effect shows us not just what we've been, but what we're capable of becoming. Every character trait you can recognize in others exists as potential within yourself. This doesn't mean everyone will develop every trait. Jung believed in individual differences and unique psychological types. It means that understanding others' psychological patterns gives you a map of human possibility, including your own unexplored territories. The mirror effect also explains why certain people feel familiar, even when you've just met them. Jung called this recognition of the archetypal, seeing universal human patterns that resonate with your own psychological structure. As you develop skill with Jung's character assessment framework, you begin to embody what he called the conscious individual. Someone who sees clearly without judgment, understands deeply without manipulation, connects authentically without losing themselves. Jung wrote, "Individuality is the opposite of being a member of a group, an institution, a race, or a nation. The conscious individual thinks independently, feels authentically, and relates genuinely, rather than conforming to collective patterns. This consciousness has several distinguishing characteristics. You see people's shadow projections with compassion, rather than superiority. You understand that their judgments reveal their struggles, not their moral failures. This allows you to respond to the pain beneath their projections rather than react to the projections themselves. You notice persona breakdowns without taking them personally. When someone becomes defensive or attacks under pressure, you recognize their protective mechanisms rather than their authentic intentions. This prevents you from being drawn into unconscious drama. You can hold paradox. Jung wrote, "The pendulum of the mind oscillates between sense and nonsense, not between right and wrong." You understand that people can be both kind and cruel, strong and vulnerable, authentic and defended, often simultaneously. You use character insights to build connection rather than create distance. When you see someone's psychological patterns clearly, you feel more empathy for their human struggles, not less. Most importantly, you apply the same compassionate analysis to yourself. Jung wrote, "The first half of life is devoted to forming a healthy ego. The second half is going inward and letting go of it." You see your own shadow projections and persona defenses as information, not indictments. This consciousness transforms how you move through the world. Conflicts become opportunities for understanding. Difficult people become teachers. Your own reactions become data about your internal landscape. But Jung warned that consciousness comes with a price. Loneliness does not come from having no people about one, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself. When you see psychological patterns clearly, you may feel isolated from those still operating unconsciously. This loneliness is not permanent, but it is part of the individuation process. You're transitioning from unconscious belonging to conscious connection. The old ways of relating through shared judgments, collective personas, or mutual projections no longer satisfy you, but deeper connections become possible. When you can see and accept both your own and others' psychological complexity, you can form relationships based on authentic understanding rather than idealized projections. Jung wrote, "The creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct acting from inner necessity." Conscious relationships feel playful rather than heavy, creative rather than repetitive, alive rather than scripted. The ultimate goal of understanding Jung's character assessment framework isn't to become a master analyzer of human nature. It's to become more fully human yourself. Jung wrote, "Man's task is to become conscious of the contents that press upward from the unconscious." As you practice observing shadow projections and persona breakdowns in others, you inevitably become aware of these same patterns in yourself. This awareness creates choice. You can respond consciously rather than react unconsciously. Integration happens gradually through small moments of catching yourself projecting, noticing your persona defenses, and choosing authentic response over automatic reaction. Jung wrote, "We don't really heal anything. We simply let it go." Letting go of unconscious patterns allows your authentic character to emerge. This process isn't comfortable. Jung warned, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." Seeing your own psychological patterns clearly means confronting aspects of yourself you've avoided. But this discomfort is productive pain. It leads to growth rather than stagnation. The integration process follows predictable stages. First, you become aware of patterns in others while remaining blind to your own. You can spot everyone else's projections but not your own. Second, you begin recognizing your own patterns intellectually, but still get caught in them emotionally. You might think, "I'm projecting right now," while still feeling completely justified in your judgment. Third, you develop the ability to catch yourself in real time and choose different responses. This creates space between trigger and reaction, allowing for conscious choice. Fourth, you begin responding to others' unconscious patterns with consciousness rather than unconsciousness. Instead of getting defensive when someone projects onto you, you can see their struggle and respond with appropriate boundaries and compassion. Finally, you embody what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold opposing psychological forces in creative tension until something new emerges. You become comfortable with paradox, uncertainty, and complexity. Jung wrote, "The difference between a good life and a bad life is how well you walk through the fire." The fire is the inevitable conflicts, projections, and persona breakdowns that characterize human relationships. Learning to walk through these experiences consciously transforms them from destructive forces into opportunities for growth. This transformation doesn't happen overnight and it's never complete. Consciousness is a practice, not a destination. But each moment of awareness, each choice to respond rather than react, each decision to see clearly rather than judge harshly, moves you closer to authentic selfhood. As you embody Jung's insights about character and consciousness, something remarkable happens. Your awareness creates ripples that affect everyone around you. Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. When you stop participating in unconscious patterns, when you don't take the bait of others' projections or react defensively to persona breakdowns, you create space for new kinds of interaction." People sense the shift even if they can't articulate it. They might say you seem different or calmer or more real. What they're sensing is your decreased reactivity to their unconscious material. You're no longer feeding their projections or reinforcing their defenses. This creates what I call consciousness contagion. Your awareness invites others into greater awareness, not through preaching or teaching, but through embodiment. Jung wrote, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." Your authentic presence speaks louder than any words. Some people will resist this shift. Your refusal to participate in unconscious drama might initially frustrate those who depend on these patterns. They might escalate their projections or intensify their persona defenses, trying to pull you back into familiar dynamics. But others will be drawn to your consciousness like flowers toward light. They'll sense the possibility of more authentic connection and begin loosening their own defensive patterns. This ripple effect extends beyond individual relationships into families, workplaces, and communities. When one person stops projecting their shadow and starts owning their authentic reactions, it gives others permission to do the same. Jung believed that individual consciousness was the key to collective transformation. He wrote, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, the world will tell you. When you know who you are, including your shadow and your authentic character beneath your persona, you become immune to the world's projections. You also become a beacon for others seeking their own authenticity. Your willingness to face your shadow gives others courage to face theirs. Your ability to drop your persona masks creates safety for others to risk authenticity." This is the deeper purpose of character assessment. Not to judge or manipulate others, to understand human psychological patterns so clearly that you can respond to them consciously rather than react unconsciously. Jung's legacy wasn't his specific techniques or theories. It was his invitation to consciousness. Every person who chooses awareness over unconsciousness, authenticity over performance, and understanding over judgment contributes to the evolution of human consciousness itself. The two things Carl Jung identified that reveal someone's true character, their shadow projections and their persona breakdowns, aren't just tools for reading others. They're mirrors that reflect your own journey toward consciousness and authenticity. Jung wrote, "To be normal is the ultimate aim of the unsuccessful. But you're not here to be normal. You're here to be conscious, to see clearly, to understand deeply, and to connect authentically with the human beings around you." Every time you catch yourself judging someone harshly, you have an opportunity to explore your own shadow. Every time you notice someone's mask slipping under pressure, you can examine your own persona defenses. Every time you resist the urge to use psychological insight as a weapon, you choose consciousness over unconsciousness. Jung understood that the journey toward authentic selfhood is the most important work any individual can do, not just for themselves, but for the collective evolution of human consciousness. Your willingness to face your own shadow, to drop your own masks, to respond consciously rather than react unconsciously creates ripples that extend far beyond your individual life. You become what Jung called a culture creator, someone who models new possibilities for human relationship and consciousness. The two reveals, Jung discovered, aren't the end of character assessment. They're the beginning of character development, your own character development, and your contribution to the consciousness of everyone you encounter. So, watch for the projections. Notice the persona breakdowns. But most importantly, turn that same clear seeing toward yourself, because the ultimate character you're developing isn't someone else's, it's your own. If you want to explore more about how consciousness transforms relationships and personal power, check out my video on who the empath becomes after Absorbing the Narcissist's Darkness and Surviving, where we dive deeper into Jung's insights about psychological transformation and authentic selfhood. Your journey toward consciousness starts with seeing clearly, and it ends with becoming who you truly are. Thanks for watching. See you in the next dimension.